Hello and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. Our weekly webinars are aimed to provide advice and share knowledge amongst business owners, and this is part of our service to our SmartRoom members. If you're not already a member or a BizSmart client and would like to access our archive of webinars, then please visit our website biz-smart.co.uk and go to the SmartRoom page. Our host joining me today is BizSmart Select member Sara Marrett. But before we start this webinar, can I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions that you may have for Sara, and she'll do her best to answer them all at the end of the session. Thank you, Sara. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, as Caroline said, I'm Sara Marrett, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a whistle-stop tour today, really, of the new GDPR General Data Protection Regulations. What I'm going to go through with you this morning, or this afternoon rather, is what are the new regulations, when are they coming, who is affected by them, how in terms of how do you store your data, and what do you as a business owner need to do when they come into effect. So what and when exactly is the new GDPR? Basically, this will remove and replace the Data Protection Act in the UK from the 25th of May 2018. So that's the key date that you need to bear in mind. Just another point is the government have already confirmed that although the UK is leaving the EU, this will not affect the commencement of this new regulation from the 25th of May next year. So who will be impacted by this new regulation? In its most simplest terms, if you are currently subject to the Data Protection Act as a business, then it is highly likely that you will also be subject to the new GDPR when it comes into effect. So it's all about what data do you hold within your business. So if you hold people's names, date of births, home addresses, email addresses, any information basically which is personally identifiable, then you will fall under the new GDPR. It also includes sensitive data and information, which can include medical records, financial data, any performance reviews and appraisals that you might hold on employees. So this isn't, I know some of you out there are business owners and you don't have employees, so it's much wider than organisations that have employees, because it can impact your clients, prospects, leads, suppliers, etc., and any sensitive or personally identifiable data that you hold on them. So what do you need to be doing? For any business that processes sensitive data, you need to undertake what's called a Data Privacy Impact Assessment, or a DPIA as it's more commonly known. And what this needs to include, this assessment, is what information you hold about people, where you got it from in the first place, where you store it, whether that's on a PC and or a paper-based system, who has access to the information, and what you use it for. Now you can do this on an Excel spreadsheet with relevant headings, etc. And I'm able to help provide you with that if anybody's interested in it going forwards. The key thing, as I've just mentioned, is on this Data Privacy Impact Assessment sheet, you need to cover any existing clients, any prospects that you might hold information on, any suppliers that you work with, and any employees. Now, when we say employees, this can be current employees, former employees, or potential employees. So when you're going through a recruitment process, this new DPIA will be critical that you complete for any data that you handle when you're recruiting. Moving on now to how you store it, and I'll go on to third-party storage as well as local storage that you might have. So how is the data protected if it's via a third party. Now, third party can be things such as a CRM, if you hold one of those. If you have Office 365 accounts within your business, a lot of businesses these days use Dropbox to share information, and you also may store things in the cloud. So you do really need to think about where it's stored. And what you need to do is obtain a similar data privacy impact assessment and/or a formal statement from these providers to ensure that you're covered, your business is covered under the new data protection regulations. So you'll need to be asking them for a DPIA and/or a formal statement that covers where it's stored, how it's obtained, etc. Now, large providers such as Microsoft, etc., are already working on their statements, so it should just be as easy as just asking them to confirm their privacy statements, etc. If you think about how you store your data locally within your business, and how you can protect it. So this would be on your local PCs and computers. If you store information and share it on USB sticks within the business. In terms of paper copies, your filing cabinets and any files that you keep. You also need to think about, these days, all of us generally access our emails through our phones. So you need to think about how they're protected as well. And what you need to be able to advise people is how your data is stored and protected for each of those areas listed there. For example, if it's filing cabinets that you use, do you limit the number of employees and people that have access to these? Are they always locked and the keys kept in a secure place? Are your PCs password protected, and do those passwords automatically require renewing and updating on a regular basis? Also need to think about how and where you archive your data. So if you have former clients or suppliers or employees and you archive information, again, either on a paper form or perhaps you store it electronically, think about how that's protected as well, because you will be asked and will need to demonstrate how that's done. Another element that you need to think about is when you send data to anyone else, and this happens more times than you probably realise. When you send it to a third party, you are responsible for ensuring that that third party are compliant with the new GDPR. You don't need to carry out audits or anything like that, but you must obtain a document from them that defines how the data will be handled by them. So they need to be giving you a statement of how they're going to store it, how it's protected, who has access to it, etc. Exactly the same as you need to do as a business. You need to be asking that of any third party that you send information to. Just one point to note as well, any data that's to be kept should be kept in the UK and the EU only. It shouldn't be stored outside of those two areas unless there's a really good justification for it, and if so, additional practices will need to be put in place if it's stored anywhere else. You need to tell people what you are going to do with their data. That's really important, and there'll be a lot of people out there and businesses that will also be aware of the GDPR that may well ask you up front, what are you going to be doing with their data? How is it stored? How is it protected? And why you're collecting it? What are you going to do with it, and what are you going to use it for? The best way for you to do this is through what's called a privacy statement for your business. And this details all the necessary requirements, such as the purpose of it, how it will be held, how people can access it, so people have a right to access their data, and to also request any corrections or amendments if they feel that any data you hold on them isn't accurate. You should also include a complaints procedure in terms of how they would go about making a complaint if they're not entirely happy with what you're doing and how you're storing it. If you have staff within your business, and I recognise not everybody will, but it's important that they are trained in GDPR. If you're unfortunate and end up facing any action or investigation from the Independent Commissioner's Office, which will be the governing body that regulates the new GDPR, then you will need to demonstrate you've effectively trained your staff in the new regulations. There are some really useful training videos on the ICO website, and it will be good practice to make sure you sit down and show these to your teams and to your staff, and to document that they've received this training on their personnel files with the relevant dates that they held it, so that they're all really clear about what they need to do within your business to comply. In terms of the Independent Commissioner's Office, I've put a link there for you to use, because if you're a business owner and a processor of any personal information, you need to be registered with the ICO. And my advice is register with them now. Don't wait until May 2018, because at least it's one thing then that's done, and there's nothing to stop you from registering with them at the minute. There's also some really useful information around the GDPR on the ICO website, some good fact sheets, etc., the training videos, like I said, which can be a good point of contact for you. As a lot of you may have seen in recent months in the media, data breaches are becoming more and more frequent, and you need to handle it effectively. This is a really important part of these new regulations in terms of how they've changed from the Data Protection Act that came in. Excuse me. If you do have a data breach at all, you only have 72 hours to report this breach to the ICO. A data breach constitutes any unauthorized access to personal data that you hold. So if your email or systems have been hacked at all, that would certainly count as a data breach. You also need to notify any data subjects that are affected by the breach. So anybody that you hold personal information on, if you have any unauthorized access to your systems, you need to contact those individuals and let them know that their data has been breached. What I've also done here is given you a link of how you report a data breach to the ISO. So that's a really important link for you to keep as well. As I say, that's been a real whistle-stop tour for you today. The government and the ICO are continuing to put out fresh data and information on the new regulations, and they will do over the coming months. Obviously, if you want to discuss things in more detail relevant to your business, or you require support around developing your own data privacy impact assessment, you can of course contact me direct. I will also be holding a brief workshop on the 11th of January next year, covering the GDPR in more detail and helping businesses prepare for it. So again, if you'd like more information on that, please just drop me a line and that's fine. Has anybody got any questions at all?
Great, thank you very much, Sara, for that. You do have a question. Your first one is from Simon, and he asks, what about right of access under GDPR?
Okay, thanks, Simon. Yes, so under the Data Protection Act, which is in place currently, there is the right of access. Under the new GDPR, these rights have changed slightly. Basically, an individual is entitled to obtain details confirming their data is being processed. They can have access to their personal detail, and this is paper copy, email copy, anything that you hold on PC, etc. and any other supplementary information which may be held under a privacy notice at all. So as a business owner, what you need to bear in mind basically is nothing is now confidential regarding information that you hold on individuals, and they have a right to have full access to any information. There used to be a £10 fee that individuals had to pay to get access to their information. This will be removed when GDPR comes in, so will be free of charge. Also, under the old Data Protection Act, if you had a right to access request from individuals, you would have 40 days to comply with this. Under the new GDPR, you will only have 1 month to respond. So I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. And another question, one from Judy. What does CRM stand for?
Sorry, Judy, acronyms are terrible these days. It's a customer relationship management system. So it's basically a database where you may hold any information relating to clients, leads, prospects, customers, suppliers. I hold one within my business where I basically input information about advice that I provided to clients, etc. as well. So any information that you hold on a customer relationship management system as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sara, for hosting today's webinar. I will send out a copy of this presentation and Sara's contact details out to you all very shortly. So please do email her direct with any further questions that you may have. But before we close, just a quick reminder that this webinar is part of our service to our Smart Room members. If you're not already a member or a BizSmart client and would like to access our archive of webinars, then please visit our website, biz-smart.co.uk, and go to the Smart Room page. That's the end of today's BizSmart webinar. Thank you all for listening, and we hope you can join us again very soon.